Everybody, what's going on? I am Greg Sussman. Happy New Year. We're back and we're previewing daily fantasy sports. Wild card weekend. What's happening, Jim Sanos?
I'm all good, Greg. It is hard to be not good when it's the playoff time. We got four pretty fun games for one reason or another on this slate, so I think it should be a pretty fun weekend for some football. How you doing?
I'm good, man. I am excited to talk DFS. I'm also in this playoff pool. I desperately need help in, and I'm hoping that today you can help me, win money in DFS and win money in my playoff pool.
That's the goal, and I think that for playoff pools, there are some teams this week that I wouldn't expect to go far if they do win, so that should help you out there as well. So definitely some guys who stand out in that perspective also.
All right, so let's start at the quarterback spot where you're going with your boy, Kirk Cousins, in a matchup against New Orleans. This is probably the last place most people would expect you to go. But why Cousins in a game they're widely expected to lose the Vikings? I guess they'll be in comeback mode all game.
It's partly that, but personally, I don't care all that much about volume at quarterback. I want efficiency. And when you think of Kirk Cousins on the road in New Orleans, where that bad offensive line will, be exposed a bit, you may not want to go here. But that's part of why I like Kirk Cousins, who is actually the cheapest starting quarterback on the four-game slate, tied with Tom Brady there, as both guys are $7,600. But I think that we've been kind of overlooking some injuries on the Saints defense because they haven't played anybody recently since that 49ers game. That's when those two big injuries occurred, DeMarcus Davenport and Sheldon Rankins. If you look at what the team has done this year without Sheldon Rankins, it's been pretty scary. According to the Quant Edge, they've allowed 8.15 yards per pass attempt when Rankins is off the field this year compared to 6.11 when he is on the field. That is a massive 2-yard difference, meaning that with no Sheldon Rankins here this weekend, we should expect Kirk Cousins to be better than a normal quarterback would be against the Saints defense. It also helps that Cousins finally has everybody healthy in this offense. The last time they had all their three big guys, Stephon Diggs, Adam Thielen, and Dalvin Cook, play a full complement of snaps was week 6. This is the first time they've all been healthy since all the way back in week 6. And the Vikings have played pretty well outside the past couple of weeks, despite those injuries, which means that here in this spot on the road against New Orleans, it doesn't, match up as being a spot you'd normally want to attack. But I kind of think that Kirk Cousins is a good way to save some salary. He is $7,600. I want to get to Dalvin Cook. I want to get to Alvin Kamara, Michael Thomas. If I want to do that, I got to spend down a quarterback. And Kirk Cousins lets me get there while still having a good ceiling. The floor here is pretty bad. So if you're playing a cash game, I would not go here. I'd rather get to Deshaun Watson or someone like that. But I think for tournaments, Kirk Cousins should go overlooked, and he does have some upside. And I think that he can take advantage of those injuries on the Saints' defensive line. So it may not be the most conventional route, but it is one I like quite a bit for this weekend.
It may not be conventional, but you're right. You have to save money somewhere. And going down to Kirk Cousins in order to get a Michael Thomas in there, well, it makes a lot of sense in this game with the game flow going, hopefully, as we expect. Kirk Cousins, a fine, sneaky, undervalued option here this weekend on Wild Card Weekend. All right, let's move on, Jim, into the running backs, and let's get Devin Singletary of the Buffalo Bills. He's been really good for a while now. Why do you consider him undervalued?
He's not just undervalued, Greg. He may be my favorite play on this entire slate once you consider salary, because the Bills were in a game that they desperately wanted to win back in week 16 against the Patriots. And when you look at games like that, it can kind of tell you what they're going to do in the playoffs. And the Bills told us they're going to make Devin Singletary a bell cow if they're in a must-win game, because in that game in week 16, Singletary played 96% of the snaps. That is a massive rate, probably the highest of any running back on this slate, and you're getting him for just $6,200 for the full 4-game slate. If we look at Singletary, since he got his role change, he's averaged 16.4 carries and 3.6 targets per game. And yeah, J.J. Watt coming back does hurt Singletary's matchup. But when you're getting as much volume as Singletary has gotten for this salary, I don't really care as much about the matchup. I want a guy who will be involved no matter what the game script may be, and who will get goal line carries as a running back and get some targets as well. And Singletary checks all those boxes. It is so hard to find a bell cow running back who is cheap in the playoffs, but Devin Singletary actually gives us that. So if you want to get to those expensive studs like Michael Thomas, Dalvin Cook, and Alvin Kamara, you need to find some value at running back for that third running back slot. And Devin Singletary brings you that without limiting your upside. This Bills team could struggle first playoff start for Josh Allen. There are a lot of factors working against them. But despite that, I still think it is a good spot here for Devin Singletary. And again, he may be my favorite running back or any player on this entire slate just because of the volume he brings you at such a low price tag.
really, really cheaply priced is Devin Singletary this week, and it allows you, as you said, to go up, spend a lot for the other running backs on the slate. Devin Singletary has been great. He's very underpriced, and is Jim's favorite value on the board. Get Singletary into your lineup this weekend. Another running back that's worth talking about is Travis Homer. While everyone's talking about Marshawn Lynch, you're pivoting to Travis Homer. Is this trying to be contrarian, or you think you'll get more points out of Homer this weekend?
I just kind of like the way that Travis Homer was used in week 17 more than the way Marshawn Lynch was used, because we talk a lot on this podcast about running backs getting targets. And the reason we do that is because targets are twice as valuable as a carry in a half PPR scoring setting like FanDuel. And in that game in week 17, where the Seahawks needed a win, they used Travis Homer quite a bit in the passing game. He had 5 targets there. He had 8 targets the week before that in that game against Arizona. Also had 10 carries in this game against the 49ers. So 10 carries, 5 targets while playing 67% of the snaps. We didn't see Robert Turbin a lot in that game, and Marshawn did play, but he only played 31% of the snaps while getting 12 carries and no targets. So straight up between the two, I think that Homer has a bit more juice because his usage is just in a better fashion than what we get with Marshawn. Now, Marshawn is a more likely guy to score, but I think that Homer, given the targets he has gotten, is someone who could potentially pay off even without scoring, which is pretty attractive. Again, a 67% snap rate last week. That is good. This Eagles defense is one that does stop the rush pretty well. There's no Dwayne Brown for the Seahawks. I don't think they're going to be able to run the ball all that effectively, which should lead to more usage for Travis Homer and potentially more passes, which benefits him as well. I think that James White is in play at 62. Sony Michel is right there. Carlos Hyde. We could go to Marshawn as well. But Homer isn't someone who should get a lot of attention. His usage is pretty good, and I think there is a path to a really good gain here. So $6,100, a very fair price for Travis Homer in general. This Seahawks team is pretty cheap, so we'll talk about them a couple more times here throughout this show today. But Homer is someone I think we should make sure we're not overlooking in this lower price running back range.
You're right. The Homer usage was really underreported story, I think, coming out of Sunday Night Football last week, and how much he was out there and how many touches he got, how many yards he had, right? Everyone's talking about Marshawn Lynch. They're talking about the Jacob Hollister play. Nobody's talking about what Travis Homer did. With Rashad Penny out for a while, Homer's part of the future in Seattle and maybe part of your future this weekend. Let's move on to the wild cards, Jim, and wild card wide receivers, that is. And we'll start with DK Metcalf. We'll stay in Seattle, where Metcalf, over the past couple of weeks, well, he hasn't done all that much, but he's found the end zone. Can he do it on Sunday?
Based on his usage, I definitely think that he can, because he's been getting a lot of high leverage targets even since Tyler Lockett got healthy again. You know, Pete Carroll said that Tyler Lockett was healthy before week 15. So we'll take his word for that and set the mark here for DK Metcalf for week 15 on. And in those 3 games, he had just 1 target in one of those games. But his market shares have still been pretty good. He has 35% of the deep targets in those 3 games. He has 26% of the red zone targets. And given that frame that he has, you would expect that red zone number to still stay pretty good. Not quite good as Tyler Lockett's numbers in that time, but overall pretty solid for DK Metcalf, including 12 targets in that game against San Francisco, which was a must-win game. Now he gets to face an Eagles secondary, which we know is not that good. Metcalf got open a couple of times the first time these two teams met. Didn't quite haul it in, but he could do so here. He is $6,200, and that's a really good number for someone who gets the high leverage looks both down the field and in the red zone that DK Metcalf gets. He brings a lot of juice to the table. He's not going to cost you a whole lot. Now, he is in a range here with some other wide receivers I do like quite a bit. John Brown is awesome. He is $6,500. Adam Thielen is right there, too. Cole Beasley is an option. But despite that, I still think that Metcalf is worth prioritizing in this range. Great matchup with the Eagles, high leverage usage, and a player who can convert in that usage, too. Kind of checks all the boxes. So DK Metcalf, a way to spend down without limiting your upside.
DK Metcalf has had a big rookie year. Let's see if he can finish it strong in the playoffs. A beat-up Philadelphia secondary puts him in a prime spot. As Jim said, the touchdowns have been there. Let's see if they can continue here on Sunday in the late game, last game. Maybe it'll be the one that makes you the cash. All right, one more wide receiver to get to, and that is Will Fuller. I know when our guys are putting together the graphics today, they're like, oh, man, Jim's going with Will Fuller. By the time this video comes out, he may be ruled out. And yet, you're going back to Will Fuller. That's really, really dangerous because he could start, play one play, and leave. Why are you comfortable with going with Fuller?
Yeah, I mean, if you're playing one lineup and you don't want to go with that risk, Will Fuller is very much not your guy. But the upside is still there. And I think that's intriguing because his salary at $5,600, I think, helps account for a lot of the imperfections that you mentioned. Because $5,600 is the range where you're getting to guys like Greg Ward, like Mohamed Sanu, like N'Keal Harry, and these guys who don't have a lot of yardage upside. But Will Fuller, when he's healthy, does have that. And we've seen him, in 6 games this year alongside Kenny Stills. In those 6 games, Fuller has 22% of the overall targets in those games and 32% of the deep targets. Those are both really good numbers for anyone on this slate, but especially for a guy who is $5,600. Now, this Bills defense is very good, and they want you to run on them. But every defense on this slate, pretty much for the most part, is going to be good. There is a reason these teams made the playoffs, so we can't really worry as much about matchups as we would elsewhere. Will Fuller is playing at home. He is indoors. That is the type of situation where you want to use high A dot wide receivers, which is exactly what Will Fuller is. So if we don't get word before Saturday that Will Fuller is good to go, I can understand being lower on him, being lower on Deshaun Watson as well as a result. But if we get word like one of those Adam Schefter bombs at midnight on Friday night that Will Fuller is good to go and expected to play, then I think you can light him up at $5,600 and feel pretty good about him. So I would base my sentiment around Will Fuller around the news that we get. If we get word Friday night that he is good to go, fire up Will Fuller as often as you want. If we don't get that, maybe you want to pivot to someone with a bit lower upside like Greg Ward or something like that. But I do want to go to Will Fuller if we get the green light because the salary is just way too low for someone this good.
He is really good when he's on the field. That's been the problem the entire career for Will Fuller. If this weekend's any different, well, you may win a whole lot of money. That's how you could do it, right? Like when Will Fuller's out there, we've seen him score 4 touchdowns and have over 200 yards. That is the upside with Will Fuller, especially with Tre'Davious White on DeAndre Hopkins. So Will Fuller, the opportunity is there. Is the health risk worth it? It's a question you have to ask yourself when building your lineups this weekend. One last player to get to is at the tight end position. I know a lot of people are going to look Dallas Goedert's way without Zach Ertz there, but you're pivoting to Jacob Hollister. How come?
Because tight end is bad, and I want to spend as little as possible at this position while still using a guy who will be on the field quite a bit. And Jacob Hollister will do exactly that at $5,700. If we look at those 3 games I referenced before with DK Metcalf, since Tyler Lockett got healthier, in those 3 games, even with Lockett being more involved again, Hollister still has 19% of the targets in that time. That is really good for a tight end who is below $6,000. He also played 89% of the snaps in week 17. And again, you want to look at games where teams had a lot on the line because it shows you what they're going to do in these playoff matchups. And when the Seahawks needed to win, they leaned a lot on Jacob Hollister with that 89% snap rate. So I'd love to get to Dallas Goedert. I think that Josh Perkins is also in play, assuming that Zach Ertz does not go. So you've got options at tight end. Jared Cook is also really good. Jonnu Smith. It's not a bad slate for tight end. But Jacob Hollister is very cheap at 57. He gives you some upside. He'll be on the field pretty much no matter what. And it's a good matchup, too, with this Eagles team. He was wide open in the end zone in the first match between these 2 teams, and then Russell Wilson just kind of airmailed it. If he hits him that time, Jacob Hollister just needs a touchdown to pay off and very well could get that here. So it's kind of risky to have this many Seahawks in the value plays, given that Dwayne Brown is not going to play this weekend. That is certainly scary. But I think given the salaries on each guy, they are still worth it. I think that Hollister is the one who makes the most sense because he fills a terrible position in general, and he does bring a good amount of juice. So Jacob Hollister, if I had to pick one Seahawk as a value play, he would be it.
Jacob Hollister was this close to finding the end zone multiple times on Sunday night. He is the one guy there in Seattle. And I get it. You want to limit the value plays in Seattle because we don't expect their offense to put up 40 points or anything like that. Jacob Hollister is a startable tight end, a usable tight end, and someone we kind of like. Hollister, a fine option at a small and weak position. That's going to do it for us here on the FanDuel Hurry Up. Jim, good luck this weekend. I feel smarter already.
I appreciate it, Greg. Good luck to you as well. Good luck with your playoff fantasy as well. And hopefully we can win some money and talk to you again next week.
Absolutely. I cannot wait. So let's do it. For Jim Sonis, I am Greg Sussman. Tomorrow, we'll be joined by Gabe Morency to give us the 6 favorite bets from Wild Card Weekend. Have a great night. We'll see you tomorrow.